Hello, my name is David Chipperfield. Thank you for this opportunity to let me explain the project for the Kaufhaus Bolzano, and I want to explain a little bit about the basis of the project and the concepts behind it and the evolution of the project. I want to explain the project in under 5 headings. First of all, a little bit about the extraordinary city structure and typologies which create the unique city of Bolzano. Then about the project site itself, the confines of the site and the opportunities of the site. And then to begin explaining how our project is conceived and the concepts behind it. Briefly to explain how it's consistent, we believe, with the overall idea of the master plan of Bolzano, and finally a small discussion on the retail and the role of retail in the city, and the desire to keep retail inside even historic cities. So first of all, the city of Bolzano, this extraordinary city with its medieval core, of tight streets, of colonnades, but also of larger squares imposed through later planning, especially 19th century planning, that orientate and create a sort of urban richness throughout the city. So these different layers of urban structure, from the more formal squares, the streets and alleys, which are really very particular in Bolzano. These very beautiful scenography, urban scenography, 5 or 6 stories, very, very convincing urban architecture. Not only through the buildings themselves, the quality of the buildings, but as much as anything, the quality of the urban space, the space between the buildings. Part of that is this extraordinary colonnade system that, especially in the medieval part of the city, and creating, I think, a very humane and fascinating urban structure. Part of the quality of such an organic city is the nature of the geometries of the city. I mean, often very picturesque and conditions responsive, as opposed to being over-planned. So how can we respond and reflect this very extraordinary quality of, on the one hand, a certain harmony and a certain clarity and organization, and on the other hand, clearly a sort of slightly picturesque and fragmented and more organic character. If we then go to the project site itself, and here we are, bounded on one side by Garibaldistrasse, on the other side by the Südtirolerstrasse, and then the Bahnhof Park itself. So here's our little triangle, and of course the whole story in a way begins with the station and the way that the station connects to the city connected by the Bahnhofsallee and this rather beautiful park. The buildings, are of variable qualities, and clearly the more urban and, in a way, humane and pedestrian nature of the city sort of collapses in this corner of the town. The existence of the bus station in this place is also creates a lot of logistic problems, and also creates a different type of urban space. The possibility and the encouragement that we received to relocate the bus station clearly helps this, the logistic, and helps us plan this area in a more considerate and pedestrian-friendly manner. The project involves the removal of a number of buildings and the maintenance of others, and through that process, of course, of removal and protection, we have the opportunity to rethink not only the architecture but also the urban plan and the spaces that form the city. Obviously, we've got now big opportunities to do that. So how do we do that? If we take the perimeter of our site, this is it, forming, new edges. But the first thing we did was to bring this edge back so that now there's a strongly formed park with a new edge to our project, sort of well-formed edge to the north side of the project. We will form a more consistent condition along the Garibaldi-Strasse and, of course, a new edge along the Südtiroler Strasse. Here's the idea of the park with the Bahnhof Alley in the middle, our project to the west. And one of the major advantages of the new project is creating a new square in front of the station, so sort of completion of the station square. You can see on this side of the square that the pre-existing building starts to do that, so we want to mirror that in some way, creating this new square. So this will be a major urban intervention to create new public space. So the first is the new park, creating and reinforcing the existing park, creating and reinforcing the station square. And there's the station square with the Bahnhofsalley and the park in front of you. And finally, the third new public space will be a new square on the north-south axis of the Südtiroler Strasse, creating a link, a termination of a sort of east-west link along the park edge. That would be the new square with the park in the background. So we formed this project not by imposing a new building on the site, but as I've described, by pushing back, defining this shape, not so much only by internal requirements, but in a way by response to the urban condition, a response to the station square, a response to the park, and a response to a new square on the north-south axis, as well as the completion of the street along the street frontage of Garibaldi-Strasse. As part of that, in a way, new facade and new form, we try to avoid the singularity of a simple form. So again, you can see that we've imposed from outside, in a way, the requirement to break down the building form and to stagger the facades in a way that is similar to the historical condition. So the simple device of just breaking down what otherwise could have been just a straight building line into a staggered one, both in plan but also in terms of silhouette. You can see here that the roof line is also stepped to emphasize that quality. Finally, I suppose the last major spatial intervention is the creation of a new arcade running from the station square to our newly formed square on the north-south axis. This will become the heart of the retail project, although, of course, it also faces the retail will face onto the new park. As well as this transparency, this east-west access, we're very interested in trying to make sure that there's other transparencies in terms of entrances on the north and south, and also in terms of the building form, that the mass itself breaks down and doesn't present itself as a singular mass. And this shows that in model terms. You can see, well, quite difficult to see in fact, but here's the park, the station, and our project defined by a number of volumes, apparently a number of volumes, so the single project broken into a more sympathetic scale, a scale which is in harmony, or at least in keeping with the grain and texture of the historical centre. That's the project fitting into the city. You can see that the silhouette volumes have some consistency with the other building forms, so we've avoided the representation of a singular monolithic building mass. Here's the ground floor plan. You can see the arcade running through east to west, the new retail frontages to the park, and the frontage both to the south and to the west, with the hotel occupying this pivotal corner on the new square. Repeating this idea of the broken down silhouette, here's the housing on the roof, different volumes staggered, and the upper levels of the hotel. Again, the project is for Kaufhaus. 50% will be the Kaufhaus, but it will be a rich mixture of other activities, of residential, of office, and hotel. So in that sense, it's a piece of city. It's not a singular activity. In terms of the master plan, we believe the project is consistent to the ambitions of the master plan. Clearly, it sits in a very important relationship to the station and to the whole gateway to the city itself. In fact, the project really helps form this new gateway. Just finally, a few words on the issue of retail in the city, and specifically retail within the historic city. Speaking of history, clearly retail has always been part of our cities back into Roman times. Here's Trajan's Market. It's also found corners, and organically it's been, a very vital part of urban life. Shopping, living, working are things which should happen in proximity in the center of cities. As shopping changes, and no longer can we rely on a single shop owner to become an investor or to generate new retail, we have to think of other ways of delivering this combination of and this overlapping of activities. There are models, of course, of larger scale interventions. Here's the very beautiful Burlington Arcade in London, where it is clearly an urban space, it's clearly a public space, it clearly enriches the city, and at the same time delivers very viable commercial space. Other versions in Brussels, again, there's no doubt in my mind that this is enriching the city, and at the same time, of course, it delivers a commercially viable project. Many other examples. In our own work, I would say a very good example is the Kaufhaus in Tirol, in Innsbruck, Kaufhaus Tirol in Innsbruck, where the conditions were quite similar. Large-scale retail wants to be in the center, wants to be in the historic center. The historic center finds it difficult to accept this, and typically, therefore, large-scale retail goes out of the center. It takes life out of the center, it takes money out of the center, and inevitably, if we're not careful, the historic city dies. It becomes only touristic. It becomes only about leisure and tourism, and therefore serious attempt to try to create new commercial projects such as this, sympathetic to the urban structure and sympathetic to the architecture structure. I would say that this has been a successful project. I believe it again. I think it adds something to the city. It certainly generates life and activity in the way that the city wants to, and adds to the urban quality as well as to the urban fabric. I think it's respectful and finds a way of sitting in with the historic fabric, and at the same time manages to be able to deliver the sort of retail investment that now motivates such projects. Another example is the Paken-Kloppenburg project in Vienna, which similarly had to deal with sensitive historic site, and we had to demonstrate how such a project could sit within a sensitive historical area and at the same time deliver a serious contemporary retail project. That's the end of the talk. Just finish on those last thoughts in a way that I think what we've tried to do in this project with the investor, absolutely supporting the same initiative, which is to find an intelligent balance between retail investment in the historic center of a city, responding by integrating that project both architecturally and urbanistically in a way that we believe not only contributes a commercial viability, but also contributes to the architectural and urban quality of the city itself. Thank you for your time, thank you for your patience, and for letting me explain the project.